The tax abatement in the city of Cincinnati is changing, and I'm here with the best person in the city to break it down. Let's get started. So thanks for joining us today. I'm lucky enough to be here with Paul Yankie from Green Building Consulting, a good friend and an advisor on everything green, everything tax abatement here in City of Cincinnati. If you don't know me, I'm Mike Hines from Oyler Hines Group of Coldwell Banker, but I wanted to sit down because the tax abatement is changing. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah.
It just, everything just got voted on with a new ordinance. Voting, is that the correct way to put it?
It is.
Yeah. So it's changing. So with that, we've done a couple of videos, but this one is really anchored in some finality and some truth of what's changing. So wanted to go in. We'll take this is a pretty advanced video, so we're going to dive into some pretty key metrics, details. But really, overview is, what is a property tax abatement?
Property tax abatement is probably one of the favorite tools of a lot of municipalities, where they don't have to come up with any cash to give you to make you buy or to reside in their municipality, but they can just forego some of your property taxes you would have paid. Much easier to incentivize that one.
Yes, and it's been very successful in Cincinnati for a number of decades now, right?
Over 20 some years, yeah.
20 some years. So now we're at, I don't know what iteration, but quite a few different iterations of the tax abatement. But this one is probably one of the largest changes to the program, right?
It is. The tax abatements in general, 1974, I believe, was when the original law was written federally that states and localities could write this kind of abatement.
Okay.
So it's been around a long time. It's a tool a lot of places use. The more normal, I'll say, or the new normal for us now has been neighborhood by neighborhood, carving out smaller particular areas that needed investment, and you then try to drive investment by giving these incentives. The city of Cincinnati and a couple other crazy cities like Cleveland decided one time to do it for the whole city. And when we did that 20 some years ago, it's because we had nobody moving in the city.
Sure. Changed quite a bit now.
So this change, where it's going to start targeting, it's a scalpel instead of a machete, right? Yes. I've said that's a big difference, and it'll be different on how everybody looks at it and uses it.
Yes. Well, the first thing to know too is Paul is very good with metaphors as we go through this right now, so he'll use some good ones, yeah. But as we go into this, I want to talk about the high-level changes on here, because really this one is quite a bit different. So let's break down the changes that just happened here in April. We'll talk about the timing of when this actually goes into effect. But let's start with the first one, which is the tiering of the city of Cincinnati when it comes to neighborhoods.
So this is it's the hardest part, and it is done for now, and we'll talk about how it can adjust. But the city is made up of 52 neighborhoods, I think is what they like to define as. And what they've done is they had come up with a tiering. It's a 3-tier system. So all those neighborhoods are now going to get put in one of those 3 buckets. Okay. And the titling kind of gives you a clue as to what they're trying to do of lift, sustain, and I always forget the third.
Lift, sustain, and let's break it down.
And lift, expand, and sustain.
Lift, okay, perfect.
And the theory is with lift, expand, and sustain is lift is you're truly trying to lift that neighborhood and trying to give all the incentives, throw all the tools at it, so that way it really gets that extra investment where none is happening. Okay. Expand, there's already some momentum going, but you don't want to slow it down. Yes. Keep it moving. And sustain means these are neighborhoods that have really done a good job at investing already into their neighborhood, but if lack of investment over the next 20, 30 years can absolutely put them back in that other category. So you don't want to slow that down.
So you have to be mindful of that as they're playing with the levers for each of these now.
Right.
So it's no one size fits all anymore. It's broken up into those 3 different tiered zones within the city of Cincinnati.
And overall, the best thing is think about, there's 6, I think, neighborhoods that are in the lift category. There are 10, I believe, in the expand, and then, I'm sorry, did that backwards. Yeah. So there's 6 that are in the sustain category, 10 that are in the expand, and then in the lift category, it's the remaining, which is another, whatever it is, 36.
Yeah, that's where the majority of them are, right? But obviously, just to throw a couple examples, High Park, Mount Lookout, that's in the sustain category.
That's exactly right.
On that kind of front. So, and we'll dive into the details for each particular one as we go in there. But let's talk too about, just from a high level as well, the couple of levers that they have within each of those, if that's okay with you, just between years, amounts, that sort of thing, because we're going to get into some of the exciting stuff, which is the add-ons, the differences of what they've done. But let's talk about those details real quick.
For the most part, they're using the same levers we've used in the past, which are years and amounts. So starting off, and this is where you want to make sure there's a commercial tax abatement the city has that's different, that also uses percentages. This does not. So this is still 100% tax abatement. on the improved value.
That is key right there. So say that again, just to make sure.
Yeah, and the definition of improved value. So it's 100% property tax abatement on the improved value that you create. So new construction, right, you have a lot.
Yes.
Okay, and you're paying property taxes on that lot. That continues. But now you build a house, that's clearly improved value, right? If you're doing a renovation, well, there's a current value now that somebody's paying property taxes on. And now you add something to it that now the county says, hey, you just improved the value. Great. Whatever that number is, that's the improved value. So it's only a property tax abatement on whatever you've now improved, not on that existing. The key to that is then when you go to these numbers, it is applicable or available to exempt the property taxes for whatever this period of time is, up to 100% of that improved value. Okay. Yeah, so it matters what you put in.
So that's what's really changing when you look at each of these three tiers, is the amount of years and the amount of the up to amount, or I should say the captured amount of the abatement that can actually be for each of those different areas. Correct? That's right. Yeah. So let's use a quick example of just one. We're going to dive into some more of the details, but let's just say I want to build a house in Hyde Park. Yeah. And I buy a lot for $200,000 or a house, and there's a tear down on there. Okay. So the house gets torn down. Your approved value, or sorry, your land basis starting point is $200,000, right? Okay. Getting torn down, right? I want to build a $500,000 house on that lot. Okay. Now, only a portion of that can be abated, or all of it, depending on what type of lead certification, all of those sorts of things, right? That's exactly on that kind of front. So okay, so with that being the case, let's dive into some of the other lead certification standards. That's still included, right? Lead, green, none of that's changed, other than maybe some details.
There's tweaks, right? But yes, it's still there. It's still a high priority, right, for the city. That did not change. And yeah, it's going to be actually probably one of the key drivers. A couple other ones, right? So one that was introduced on the last iteration, which is only 2 years ago, by the way. So the iterations are speeding up, it seems like.
We've done a lot of these videos.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, keeping us busy. Was visitability, right? So that is, again, trying to give the ability for aging in place, right? Really, really high priority for us aging individuals, that we can see what's coming, is that we are going to need to focus on mobility, right? At different levels of our aging. But also when it says visitability, I like that term because it's truly so that people have access to visit, right, homes. And this was a big deal. They were able to put a really cool incentive in here for very low dollars that they're giving away, but really powerful to the buyer to say, you know what? Those are things, design things that I can put into my house right in the beginning, and it's going to be there forever. Yeah.
So that's so key in the beginning to be involved, to get an architect or an engineer or you guys that knows what they're doing so they can plan for this early on.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Even with remodel, the same goes.
That's exactly right. Now, what they did do, which was really cool, they actually expanded even further. So that we snuck that one in the last iteration, and it was incredibly popular. They did a great job. They brought it back into this iteration, but then they expanded it. So they've got visitability and they've got visibility plus. Okay. All right, so it's actually considered universal design. Now you're getting closer to almost ADA, American Disabilities Act, kind of driving. So now we're talking even a little further, like having the ability for grab bars and showers, and that the levers right on certain doors are easier to open. Okay. It's little details, but they make a huge difference. So they got even it's a 2-tier just even in that.
Wow, just for that. So you have visibility, and then what was the second one called that you were just talking about?
Visibility plus or universal design.
Okay. So those, are there any other additions that somebody should keep in mind as they're looking into these?
Yeah, so besides lead, which we'll come back to the big one there, is they definitely re-upped the historic piece, which is a big deal for us. So when, this is both for new construction and rehabs, right? And it's kind of like it's water flowing to the lowest point, right? If you ever have a leak in your house, water will find the lowest spot. Absolutely, yeah. Development kind of goes that way too. And so one of the big changes over the last couple of years, there was actually more incentive for tearing down a house and building new. And that was a tough thing for a lot of neighborhoods. Sure. That got switched, and it got just a little bit switched here. Now it got even a little more. Okay. So historic's going to get a bonus. So there's right now, and this is what's different, we got it in the last version, it was any home past 1920, right? So we have a lot, we're an old city. Sure. We have a lot of properties that are Civil War era, right? They changed it to 50 years old. So now it just opened it up. So I will say most neighborhoods, most homes that are existing, right?
Especially in the city of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
You know, you get out to the suburbs, maybe that's not the case.
That's right.
Even though it may very well be. But that's interesting. So now there's an incentive to keep homes, obviously.
That's
Try
right.
to add that on. Okay.
That's right. So it's a big deal. So if you have a home that's over 50, you're going to get this extra bonus of dollars that tag on, and it gets pretty nice on that. So and then we'll talk about it a little bit when you go into multiple units. It adds on even more on top of that.
That's pretty nice. So how about you mentioned lead again? Do we want to jump into lead
Sure,
as far
why
as how
not?
that changes? Because that's, you know,
If we have to, I
yeah,
guess.
go ahead.
Yeah.
You kind of know a little bit about that, I think, with your background.
It's kind of my favorite, yeah, if I have to play favorites. So here's the fun part is that, look, genius or lucky, whatever we want to call it, right? The city of Cincinnati jumped into the sustainability world back in 2007 by putting an incentive in place, and then they really got it really going, I think in 2000, I think it was 11 or 12, by putting LEED in this already existing tax abatement program and basically juicing it, right? And so saying, look, we're going to give you up to 200,000 or 250 or whatever it was of improved value. But if you do LEED, here's more.
Yeah.
And they're continuing with that theory. So right now, most of the tiers, most neighborhoods fall somewhere between 200,000 and about 350,000 for just building or renovating in that particular neighborhood.
Yes.
Okay. Add LEED to it, and there's a couple tiers, but it's going to add either 200,000 more or $300,000 more.
Wow. So it gets you to a pretty significant adding that in there. And the cost, you know, as we know, the cost to add LEED is, if you're building the right way, is negligible. I mean, it's, you know, there's cost there. There's no doubt about it.
This is the way I'm always supposed to say it. Always costs that first time because you're still learning.
Sure.
But if we do our job, that's what our company gets to do, right? We get to help people get there the right way.
Absolutely.
And get there the most optimized way. Most of my builders now, they're doing it. It's not costing them anymore because it's baked into their process, and all that added value they're able to now show back to their customers.
That's true. It's evolving the way they build homes,
Yeah.
right? You know, regardless of all of this, which is fantastic, it just helps them evolve and improve and be better on that front. So.
And keep in mind, that is exactly what incentives are supposed to do. Incentives are supposed to break inertia, right? So we're all you know, creatures of habit, right? We get into a great process, and the building community is the same way. We build great homes. We know we're doing great.
Sure.
Could it be better? Maybe, but man, that's a risk because I got to try something new.
Yeah.
Well, that's what this is for. This is really to help that building community and even homeowners try it as well, to say, look, I want to try something new, but this incentive is going to help me get over that hump.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it comes second nature. And
Just like it is now, you know, 15 years later on that front. So real quick, just so we're not going over anybody's head, explain what LEED means and just how that impacts everything here.
Absolutely. So in the world of sustainability and high performance homes, what we like to say, LEED is that Cadillac kind of rating out there that's for all the sustainability. So if you're trying to get almost your miles per gallon on your house, right? You're trying to be able to compare house to house,
Sure.
how sustainable this house is versus another. LEED is that sticker, right, if you will. But it's all the parts of green, which is pretty cool. So it's not just energy efficiency, using that same metaphor, right?
Yeah.
But it's water efficiency, it's the site, right, and how it uses resources, it's your location, it's materials, and even, you know, the VOCs and indoor air quality that's coming around. So it's that whole picture, and that can become a real asset value. So that's another thing that's kind of baked in. This LEED certificate actually has, on its own, without tax abatement, has value. Appraisers can give you value for it. Your agents can market it well.
And now we have fields that we input on LEED for, thanks to you, obviously, and being part of the MLS. And we should say also it's a point-based system, right? So the more, everything you just mentioned can get you points, and the more points you have, the different thresholds, you know, LEED silver, LEED gold, LEED platinum, correct?
That's right. Every LEED building, if has the LEED plaque and it says it's LEED certified or more, it has the prerequisites. It has to be it's an above code program. It's better than code.
Yes.
But after that, it's a choose your own adventure. So you get to go in and pick, right, the points that you want. If you want to be super energy efficient and net zero, you can get your points there. You care about water and the site, great.
Perfect on that front. So that helps explain quite a bit when we dive into all of these add-ons, which obviously we're going to get into.
Yeah.
So let's talk timing. What is the timing of all of this right now?
So the timing is as they pass the ordinance is passed. It's legal.
Okay.
But the magic you want to find out about is the magic number is the date of the grandfathering. So there's a trigger date of September 1st of 2023, and any jobs that go in for a permit. So you put an application for permit into the city of Cincinnati. they get stamped, like putting your taxes in on April 15th, right? It gets stamped on that moment. If you have a valid application, hasn't been approved yet, just an application in, then you're in for the current rules.
Yes, grandfathered before September 1st of the current rules before this.
Anything after would be on the new rules. Now, there's a couple scenarios where the new rules would actually give you a little more. So there's an interesting scenario if you're in that talk with your expert.
Call you.
Yeah, usually. And then we would go through that. And there's, and I'll give you the hint, it has to do with really bigger rehabs, for example. There's some scenarios you might actually want to wait a month before you put your permit in.
Good to know.
Things like that.
Okay, that's great. So I think that's really the key. Is that's a lot of questions people have as they're buying properties right now. What are they getting into? So that's fantastic. Now, one of my favorite parts about this, really just because it's a huge change to this, is the tiering. So let's dive into the tiers, and let's start off with probably what's been most, really vocal and at the forefront of everything is areas in the sustain tier, which is Hyde Park, Mount Lookout. We have a whole list of them here.
Yeah, so
the areas you'd expect.
Hyde Park, Mount Lookout, Oakley, Linwood, Columbia Tusculum, and Mount Adams. So those 6 neighborhoods are going to see the most significant difference. Previously, it was a 15-year, 100% abatement, and the dollars weren't that far off, right? They were pretty close, but now it's going to go to a 5-year maximum for new construction. And an 8-year maximum for rehab. And you'll see that little delta, right? That difference between new construction and rehab, like we were talking about. They want to keep pushing on rehab, and that's great because in those neighborhoods,
need it just like anywhere else, right? Yeah. It's an incentive to keep those older homes on that front, which was obviously people were very vocal about that for a long time.
It is. So. And what I do bring up, those neighborhoods, yes, also had the majority, right, of the work, but it was also that was majority where the building was already happening. Correct. And something to keep in mind, forget. Like once we get past September 1st, we've all got to forget that, right? What if you're building a home into next year, you're building that home, right? Absolutely. And take a look at that and make that decision, right, with that incentive compared to your other options.
Yeah, let's just get one of those Men in Black neuralizers.
Right,
because this is still pretty good the way it will be going.
It's
from
pretty
September
amazing.
On. It's still, to build a home, we're sitting here right now in the city of Montgomery. Obviously, if you build a house down the road over here, you're not getting this tax abatement. So I think that's important, is the perspective on that, just to understand that whole thing. So that's the first area. And real quick, I think we may have glossed over one key detail is the different metrics, basically of these tiered programs.
How they get in.
How did they get in there? Just before we jump into the middle tier.
Yeah, so there's 6 metrics that they use, and these metrics could potentially change over time, but effectively there are things like housing starts, average income, percent occupancy. So they're financial and economic metrics for those neighborhoods, very important. And those metrics give a score. And so each one, and depending on where you fall in those particular categories, and this is more of on a national, and then it also breaks into a regional average, then that's how these things go in. Here's a tricky part. It's important, but it's also going to be interesting. These metrics could potentially change, and they do have kind of an item set in to help you with that. They are forced to look at them every 3 years.
Okay. Right, so a neighborhood could move. It's like a soccer team.
Hey, don't worry, you're not locked in here forever.
It's like it can move up and down. Okay. And you hope, obviously, it's elevating certain areas, as this happens. So let's jump into the middle tier. Okay. I'm blanking on all the names. That's why you're here.
Expand. I'm still getting them locked in too.
Yes, yeah. By September 1st, I'll have this down.
That's right.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
So expand, same thing. Biggest difference now is that at 15, now 10. So, and I'll tell you ahead of time, right? The lift is going to be still back up at 15. And so what tends to happen, that the way this is shaping, the lift neighborhoods are keeping most of what they had, right? A tiny bit of little extra if you really focus on those bonuses.
Sure.
And then you're getting about a third of the year's cut, and a third more cut, right? So a third cut for expand, a third more cut. And thinking that through, 5 years, everybody cares about the money now versus the money later, but that matters. It is about a third total.
Yeah.
But that gives you an idea.
Okay, so it's still again strong. So you're looking at when you're just jumping it down 15 years to 10 years now on that one, and then let's jump into the
and 12 years for rehab.
12 years of rehab, yes. I think that is one big key you're hitting on, is how important the rehabs are. They were you and the whole working group was very mindful of incentivizing certain things
And you know this number better than most. What's the percentage of house sales, right, that happen in a city? What is it, 95% is existing homes?
Existing homes, of course,
Right?
of course. Yeah, not
So,
teardowns. Yeah.
yeah.
It's a very small segment, but obviously, people pay attention to that.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. This is a very big benefit for most.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Even in areas like, High Park and Mount Lookout and that sort of things. So let's drop down to the lowest tier, which is Lift, correct? And that's the one with the overwhelming majority of the neighborhoods in the city of Cincinnati. Over half of the neighborhoods are in that, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So throw a few different examples of those, just so maybe like Madisonville is in there, correct?
Madisonville's in the Expand.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, Madisonville is Expand.
So in the Lift neighborhoods, you've got things like Avondale and Bond Hill, College Hill, Evanston, Hartwell, Kennedy Heights, Price Hill, Mount Airy, Mount Auburn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the great detail before you came in, and I know this isn't out there just yet, and hopefully we're not going to make the city of Cincinnati mad, but you mentioned that they're going to actually have on their website, if you click on your neighborhood, and then you're going to find out what the details are for that specific neighborhood.
I want to give props to the city, since I don't get to do this with city departments too often, and I got to absolutely do economic development on this, and Matthew Heldman, who's been the project manager for this. Guys, they've just done an amazing job at really paying attention to the little details, to how to make this easier. Most of it's already built and it's going to be rolling out.
Yes.
But things like the web page that you're going to go into to get all this great information, including like fillable forms now, they're going to be right on the website. You can pay online now. That's a crazy idea when it comes to the city's services. Yeah, very, very, very new. But you're going to be able to do all of that, and one of the first things when you type in, you're going to be able to put in your address. Hey, I'm looking at this house. Is that on the border of Madisonville or which one? Done. It just pops up here. You're in this tier, right? Here's the rules. It is such a big deal because you know this. MLS, for example, you go looking for houses, right? And all of a sudden, wait, I thought that was in Mount Auburn. Or I thought it was over the line. It's in Mount Auburn. I used to live literally on one of those lines. So that little thing is not something you take lightly, and it will be all very black and white.
That's awesome. That's going to be great. And I think with this being a little bit more complicated, it's still simple once you understand the premise of it, or maybe the higher level. But anything to make the buyer or the property owner's life a little bit easier. Which again, shout out to the city of Cincinnati for doing this right. And I know some people will be upset because of the changes, and maybe they've been hoping to get a property somewhere and things will change. But just again, put those blinders on of what was happening in the past and focus on the future.
And it's time. If you look back at when this was done because nobody was moving in.
Yes.
We have people moving in.
And the intention was to change this, not to have this be forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is all about inertia. Inertia has changed.
Yes.
Right?
They built some momentum. So the people that have stuck with this long enough now get to get some bonus points on here, because I know these are some items you're really excited about.
Yeah.
So why don't you give a few of these different little details to kind of close up shop, and share some secrets of you that's invested hundreds of hours into this and weeks.
I don't like counting those, thank you, but I appreciate
unless you're
that.
sending a bill to somebody. Which
I wish. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Two big ones, guys, and I like that the theme, right? The last couple times we've done it, I've got to say it each time, and I get to help. One is, if you can't tell, focus on those renovations and those rehabs. Here's like a little nugget that's in there that a lot of people won't pay attention to: additions. One interesting little rule that was in the current rule, so this is one where you'd literally want to wait, is I have an amazing house in Hyde Park that's a 110-year-old Tudor that the family's lived there 25 years, and they were like, you know what, we were deciding whether to move out or stay, and we decided we're going to stay, but the kids might come back, and so we're going to do a small addition. So it's a 3,000 square foot house. They were going to do literally a 300 square foot addition. That's it, just to make an extra bedroom and then an extra garage underneath.
Super cool, yeah.
That alone, that 300 addition, was going to send them into the new construction rules instead of the rehab rules, which would have been worse. So it would have penalized them to do it. That little thing got changed. So now any renovation to an existing structure, even if you add double the size of the house, it's going to be considered renovation. And you see the rules are better for renovation.
Sure. It almost seems like a no-brainer, but I'm sure when it's written, you don't understand the implications until you're learning after the fact.
So little things like that really add up. And that's what we want to do. We want to see these amazing houses get modernized, but still keep that character in the neighborhood that we all love. So that's a big deal. I can tell you also something that's coming, because I've already written it. Matter of fact, I had it written for a couple of years. We had to wait until this got in, was going to be a new addition for moderate rehabs. So the structure fits mostly what we can squeeze in there, but it's going to be another program that's going to help for those that aren't going and doing a deep, right, gut rehab, right? But we want to make sure that we give, and there's something in here already for that, but we want to make sure that when you do that, you actually do take some of your other systems, and if you want to now make sure that indoor air quality is focused on instead of just painting and fixing up the kitchen.
Lipstick. Yeah.
Great, and energy efficiency. So that moderate rehab program we have now, it's called the HERS program, is going to get adapted, and it's going to be more broad-based and factor in a little more than just energy efficiency, a couple more things like indoor air quality and whatnot.
Okay.
It's going to be more applicable to more people by giving a little bonus to it. So.
Yeah. And those are the little nuanced details that you need somebody to help guide you through this, because you literally, as you mentioned, you wrote some of the
I did. So you can blame or thank. It's either one.
Yeah,
I'll take either one. Yeah,
exactly. We'll give you
give to that one. One last one, and I want to give, this is complete credit to a couple council members who this was a passion for them, and they did a great job, and actually fed off each other, because a number of them got together and really started working on counter proposals that ended up building into this. Multiple units. So this wasn't a big deal. We got 4 families to come into the residential tax abatement, which the residential tax abatement is twice as powerful in a lot of cases.
Sure.
So that's great. But now what they're going to do is, let's say you've got, this is really popular right now. I've got my house. I've lived in it. I want to stay here, but I want my mother-in-law to move in. But I don't think she can fit in my current house. But I could build. I've been wanting to put an extra 2-car garage back there. Maybe I could put a bonus room. It's called accessory dwelling units. You add a unit, right, to your house, then you're going to get a bonus per unit. So if, let's say you do that same thing and said, you know what, I could actually add kind of 2 units up there, and maybe, you know, son's going off to college, he can hang out in the other one. There's 2 more. So you're going to get these extra bonuses for that, which is a huge deal. It's one of the free low-hanging fruit cities have. We've all been wanting that flexibility, and we've had a lot of restrictions on that type of things through zoning and everything else.
Well, and where inventory is a huge problem, correct? Here in Cincinnati and everywhere, this is going to help alleviate a little bit of that. Maybe not, you know, it won't solve the problem, but it'll help.
It's a big deal. One last thing on that, look, and this will be great once the website's up, there's going to be certain corridors where there is transit development happening. And if you go where transit is already, that's important, because now that's going to really help people long term be able to get to jobs, right, and get around. That's a big deal. Then you'll get another bonus if it's in those areas. So you're going to have these segments within segments. Do you think the website's going to be important, right?
Just a little bit,
right?
I'm already confused at the end.
Make it pictures. I want pictures, you know, type in, tell me what to do.
Exactly. Just not those pictures when you're trying to prove that you're not a robot.
That's right. Yeah, those I don't get right.
Find a fire hydrant. Yeah, it's a little different than that. Well, I'll say this is I think that's a great segue into one big point on this is make sure that anybody that's out there that's about to act on any of this information is consult with an advisor. Make sure, whether it's an attorney, whether it's most likely Paul, because Paul's the man when it comes to this, call the city of Cincinnati. This is meant to be informative, but not to act on and just use as your only resource here. I think that's one of the big keys here. And the second is just be mindful. September 1st, this is all changing. So if you are under contract on a piece of property, if you are running and looking for a piece of property right now, just be mindful about it. And it's always good to just use some strategy to figure out what to do, how to leverage this program to benefit you. But it's exciting. I'm glad you guys have put a lot of effort, a lot of work into this. I know a lot of people are there, or should be thanked on that, but this is incredible. And I'm glad we got to finally do a video that actually had some, I know I use this word, like finality to it because it's finished up. So Paul, thank you.
You know, I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. So if you have more questions on anything right now, we'll have Paul's contact information below. Also, be sure to subscribe down on the YouTube channel, and then below we'll have all sorts of records, information, links, everything you need to know so you can get the right resources that you need as you want to get started. So thanks again, and we hope you'll join us. Hopefully we don't have another version of this anytime soon.
Just take a break for a little while, right?
Yeah, exactly, just for a year or two.
That's right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.